Good evening.
Oh, is it live?
Yes, we're
Everything's
live.
Okay.
I didn't sneak up on you this time. I just started it without you knowing. Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Everybody's waiting. Sorry. Getting on me. This is the piece he's been working on all week that I haven't actually shown yet, which I'll probably show tomorrow or Monday.
Yeah. This is actually based on one of those quick little sketches that I did last week. When people were saying, what do your sketches look like? And I just did like a few random little pieces of drawings and I showed people.
Mm-hmm. Hey, Amy Baker.
And this is one of them. I just took that shape and brought it into this.
Right. If you guys have any questions, just let us know.
So people, laugh when I say this, but this is actually I look at drawings as finished pieces in and of themselves, but this is also has the dual purpose of being a very, very finished study for a larger painting. So, and the fun part is figuring out what's going to change between this and the larger piece.
The next one.
Yeah, because it's going to be a taller, more vertical piece. Mm-hmm. And it'll include more of the bottom of the composition. So
someone said your art's so good they want to hang up their tools.
No. You just keep you just keep doing it. That's the only reason. I mean, my stuff when I was younger looked just pretty much like everybody else's. I didn't hang up my tools. That's the thing.
Point.
I see people all the time that make me think I've been spinning my wheels for years. All the time.
What were we talking about earlier this week? What you're doing there. Oh.
Can you see?
Yeah, it just looks better with only one light on.
So what I'm doing is I'm going through here and basically smoothing out some of the textures, making some of it more rough, picking out little pinpoints of black so that it gives an indication of the value range for when you have an indication of what the darkest darks and the lightest lights are, then it kind of tells you what the shapes are, because when you have a value change, you have a shape change. Mm-hmm. And if I set these little tiny pinpoints as black, in here, are really dark, then it kind of gives you more information about what these shapes are turning into. So it's like having a black point and a white point in photography,
This is the noodling part, right?
Yeah, I'll usually spend about a day just like going all over the thing and picking little areas out and detailing it or smoothing it or picking out little details and bumps. Mm-hmm. Like some of this stuff comes from the striation that's in the paper, and some of it I made with an underlying sketch, and some of it is because I erased an underlying sketch and it left an impression, so it came through. Mm-hmm. So right now I'm calling this guy the Cathedral. For the time being, because it kind of looks very cathedral-esque to me, the shape.
Good morning from Japan. How did you learn to draw?
How did I learn?
Kept drawing.
By making a whole lot of really crappy drawings for a long time.
Yes.
Yeah.
Just remember everything, and he won't like this in like 2 weeks or something. Or still like it, but there'll be parts
of it.
Right.
But there's no secret to it. Most of learning how to draw is learning how to look at things, how to see. Because especially if you're drawing from reality, and bits and pieces of this are from reality, like these are my hands. This was referenced. I just threw a drape over my arm and took a photograph. Of course, everything else I just sort of made up, and I sort of can make the anatomy at least look dimensional, even if it's not, it's not anywhere near accurate human anatomy. But if you look around enough, you could probably find some range of human anatomy that would get close to some of the dimensions. People have very interesting shapes and different shapes. Mm-hmm. And so I just sort of look at a lot of stuff and remember it. Like, I don't usually pull up bark reference for things, but I remember what bark looks like in terms of...
Or intestine reference.
Yeah, because I've studied it. I looked at it long enough that I internalized the shapes, and then I just draw them mostly from memory, unless I feel I really need to have an element of realism in it. Like I thought this guy was so kind of abstract that he really needed that little bit of realism that hand reference.
How long have you been working on this one?
This for about 4 days, 5 days.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
and
that, along with like playing with the other one that I was working on last week, that's up here, and making resin casts, little resin casts with my daughter that we did with some alcohol ink, and basically distracting myself with other things.
Yeah. Yes, and this, if you guys don't want to stick around the whole time, I will eventually get this up on our Patreon and then up on YouTube. Patreon is Alan Williams, and the YouTube is Alan Williams Studio, since I made sure.
Right. And for this one, I'll show you what I've been using. This is a 4B lead, Mitsubishi Heine, 10B, 6B Caran d'Ache, a couple of like HB and 2B, which are very close to the same leads. And
that's just Strathmore paper, correct?
This is a 6B lead as well. And the abrasive erasers I was using on the graphite washes, they don't really work very well on paper like this. For little tiny spot erasing they do, but I tend to use almost always kneaded erasers for this kind of stuff. And then once I got everything up, then I'll go back and hit it with a little bit of an abrasive eraser very lightly.
Just to get that highlight.
Yeah.
Point.
And then to clean it really well, just use these electric erasers, which are, pretty much any electric eraser will do.
Yes. I was going to ask if you have supplements or a special diet, and I said only caffeine.
Caffeine?
Coffee.
Yeah. See, I started here with this Vietnamese instant iced coffee that I'm flying over my drawing.
Not over the drawing, please.
If I spilled it on it, I would just put coffee on the whole thing and make it coffee color.
Oh, God. Do you use references for illumination, or what kind of studies of illumination do you use?
I look at it a lot. Actually, one of the things I look at quite a bit lately are some of the old classical paintings where you see like portraits, and you see that it almost looks like the face and the figure are coming out of deep shadow. I really like that look, and part of that may be that it appeals to the lazy part of me that doesn't want to paint everything in the background. But I really like the luminous quality of it, and I really like the subtlety of seeing shapes that are, pushed back into into deeper dark.
Yeah.
So.
Sorry, I'm getting my drink.
Yeah.
And you know what? He doesn't need any other additives for creativity. Even though people have said that before.
These are the 6B leads for this 3mm, by the way, the Caran d'Ache leads.
Nice.
So, and mostly it's coffee, in terms of the drug.
And walking.
And that's about it, really.
Music and sleep.
Yeah, I've gotten into sculpting quite a bit lately.
Where did you get this inspiration?
This is something I've had a series I've been kind of working on. This is going to be we're working on a gallery show, and it's also a book. It's this part of something called The Covenant, which are these sort of pseudo kind of religious celestial beings that sort of portray different types of guardian figures. If you've looked at some of the other characters and figures that I've done and read the narrative, many of them are concerned with protecting humanity, even though they may look horrible or may look terrifying.
Well, the gallery show is going to be at Copronason in July of this year.
Yeah.
And then
also be it for Monsterpalooza as well.
Monsterpalooza will be in Pasadena in April.
I have this ongoing theme in a lot of the work that I do, that you can't tell whether or not something is good or evil based on what it looks like, because I think that's one of the things that cause people to have an agenda based on appearance, and there's no reason why something that was never human would conform to human traits of beauty. It would just be what it is, and conversely, it's kind of deceptive to think that things that are always beautiful are always good. That's how predators work.
Right.
They make you believe in them. They make you trust them, and they make you think they're beautiful, and then
So this inspiration was just from kind of working with that theme. That's
that ongoing theme, and each one of the like I said, the characters that I have, because I've done the stillborn king, I've done like the crooked man, the shepherd.
Right.
This is the cathedral, and in religion, there's a hierarchy of angels, and it occurred to me that if you can have something like a throne, that I believe the thrones were the ones that had thousands of eyes and thousands of wings, and didn't look human at all, and the scepters and the powers, in terms of the mythology and the lore, You could pretty much go any direction with a celestial being or a spiritual being in a way.
Yeah.
And it could look whatever you want it to. It doesn't conform to human standards of beauty, So.
Yeah. Someone asked how you kept the smudges off of the drawing.
Yes.
Back of a cradle board upside down.
Yep, this is
for painting.
Yeah, just your standard painting cradle board that you can buy.
And your standard
at Dick Blick, and this is
quarter-inch board.
Yeah, I think. And then
if you do get smudged, it doesn't matter. You just work it into the piece.
Well, I also know if I'm working in an area, if there's going to be an eraser smudge there or something, I can erase it. Even if it's not going back to white, it's still going to be lighter than the value I'm probably going to put on top of it. So it's not going to show up. I've never really had much of an issue. I always keep my hands really clean in terms of oil. So I've never had much of an issue with touching paper and having it create a spot that, with your hand oil.
And this is the Strathmore paper, correct?
Yeah, this is Strathmore cream journal paper.
Strathmore cream journal?
No, this is Stonehenge.
Stonehenge cream journal paper.
Stonehenge.
Yeah, the couple of papers you like are the Stillman and Burns Zeta series, which is a very white, smooth paper. And then this Stonehenge.
This is Strathmore.
This is Stonehenge cream journal paper.
Right. The Stonehenge cream journal. And you can tell, the Stillman and Burns is very white. Strathmore is a little yellow, and then Stonehenge is kind of more
it's got the cream
vanilla
to it.
cream look to it.
Awesome. And then one more question before you continue. Someone asked how you prevent hand cramps, which I know you and I have discussed this a lot.
I have a suspicion because I don't get hand cramps and I don't get repetitive stress disorder. I feel like it's because I use many different sized pencils.
Not just these little ones, but
right. I even have like these.
And you're kneading the eraser.
I almost always have a kneaded eraser of my hand, and I'm playing with it. This is sort of like a security thing for me. It's like a security blanket. I'll have these with me when I go to a doctor's office too, because I'll just sit there and do this with it, which makes them super soft, by the way. And sometimes they get kind of unusable after a point.
You have like 7 of them over there right now.
Yeah. and a bone of something. I don't know what that is.
Some bone. All right, you gonna keep picking at that thing?
Yeah. So it's kind of at this point that I start it's 90% done or even more. But so what I'll likely do is just
I like that.
Really, the little crack.
I like that crack right there.
I'll find some little details and just play with them, and then I'll most likely spray fix this with a matte medium. And then come back with a darker graphite or something like a Cretacolor black or a Nero, which is an oil-based graphite.
Is Nero or is the Cretacolor?
No, Nero is the oil-based. Nero pen, but I think Nero is made by Cretacolor. I think it's the same pencil.
Maybe it's the same pencil.
Yeah, and it has a darker dark. And then once I'm done with that, there won't be any gloss to it from the side at all, and the whole thing will look like it was printed on the paper, which I like. I mean, it's fun. I don't do everything like that, but for something like this, that's a matte paper, it has a tooth. It looks better if there's no gloss. Whereas on stuff like this, it's super smooth. It looks better if if it has a gloss to it. So, but that's just my opinion. But
that's what you like.
All of this is my opinion, by the way.
Right.
But in terms of how I learned to draw, it was one of the things I was most comfortable with early on. The funny thing is, when I first started, for a long time, I refused to draw figures, people. I always draw creatures. And then once I kind of overcame that hurdle, it's like I started drawing figures, pen-up, just figurative stuff all the time. And it's almost like you can almost tell what you need to address by what you avoid drawing.
Yes, no feet.
Yeah.
I haven't drawn any feet.
I actually love drawing hands and feet. It's one of my favorite things to draw, because it's one of those things when you do it well in a piece, you can almost get away with messing up the rest of the piece if the hands and the feet.
The hands and feet are good enough.
Yeah. And
the texture you put in just with the soft.
This is mostly the texture of the paper that comes through, because I'll use where's it at? So I'll use these this is like a 6B lead. You don't even have to sharpen it, but you just kind of you let it ride on the top, and just let it hit the surface part of the grain of the paper. And the way you keep building it is not by going harder, but just by going softer and finer, and going back over it. Yeah. Mm-hmm. It sort of damages the paper if you just bear down,
that's where the burnishing comes from.
Yeah, that can be a good look too if you want it. But if it's out of place in a drawing, it would be out of place on this.
Right.
I don't want to do that.
Someone asked if you use blending stumps.
I do. I use tortillons. I was using a blending stump, but a lot of times I'll use a brush because it's a little softer and you can get a little bit of a more controlled blend. You don't have to make everything kind of marshmallowy. Blending stumps, you can do the same thing. You have to use as much finesse with a blending stump or a brush as you would with the pencil, and realize you shouldn't, like, in my opinion, when you do it over the whole thing at once, you can over soften. It can be really soft and doughy and marshmallowy, and you have to go back into it and sharpen it up and detail it again.
Right.
So, but that's what and one of the things I try to do, especially with something like this, is I try to make sure that there aren't any really super highlights in the piece too early, because a lot of things that people make a mistake of is thinking that skin is it's lighter color than it is. You know, there really isn't, even relatively speaking, the highlights on a body aren't really white. Mm-hmm. They're just the highest white on the body.
Right.
Which, you know, I take some liberties with that in this. Because this is actually just the white of the paper. So I find a place wherever the lightest lights are going to be,
right,
and make sure that everything else falls off, and that the highlights aren't everywhere, you know, because that's one of the things too that starts to...
That's what makes these guys pop out though, right?
Right.
That's what makes those pop out.
Yeah, you can play with these things, and if you do it well enough, you'll walk up to the thing and try to brush them off, which you got to be careful on graphite, but because they'll look like they're sitting on top of the paper. Mm-hmm. If you played with the values
it's like
enough.
Your paper doll piece you're supposed to finish.
Yeah. So.
Okay. There are two different answers to this question: one that you will give and one that I will give. It says, how long on average do you spend on a piece? Alan will say, as long as it needs.
Yeah.
Right. I will say, probably too long.
Right. Because generally speaking, I can go anywhere from, I've done a little bit larger piece than this that was even more detailed in about 4 days. That was the Good Dog.
Yes.
This one I've been working on about 4 days. But I can do a smaller, like a 5x7 that's kind of comparatively detailed and overnight. Like this was basically one night. This is a night's worth of work, but it's a different process.
Well, then the whole... Not playing with the graphite beforehand. That was
right. But if I mean, it's actually faster for me to paint than it is to draw.
I know you need to paint.
I did a 2 foot by 4 foot painting, and that was about 14 days. And a 2 foot by 4 foot drawing would probably take me 2 months.
That's true.
So this is how I go back and make sure that the value, the gradation on the paper isn't just noticeably graphite scrubbed on the paper. I go back and tickle the highlights wherever the tooth of the paper is rough.
Because if you're just going to use a powdered graphite on a paper, it's not going to have this texture.
No, if you use powdered graphite on this paper, everything will go very gray very quickly. Yeah,
it'll go smudgy.
Which you can do, but like I said, you have to work back into it quite a bit. You can't just let it stand. Just like when you use a smudge stick or a tortillon or a brush, you usually have to work back into it a bit.
Yes. These are all the Saturday night diehards.
Yeah. So I guess this is a routine for a while, unless we're at a show or something, that we'll come and do this on Saturday nights at 9.
Oh.
And sometimes, I'll be in the more dynamic phase. This is not the most dynamic phase. This is like watching somebody stare at the head of a needle for a few hours, because it's such it's a little bit of a obsessive compulsive kind of.
People are being very complimentary of it. So.
Oh, well, thank you.
Manuel asks, "What do you think about gouache paints? Seems like they're getting popular again."
I use like the acrylic gouache, which I think is kind of a fake gouache. I think it's more of an acrylic paint that has opacity like gouache.
I just posted the your alien study.
Yeah.
The one, and that was gouache with oil over top.
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah, I like gouache. The true gouache is basically watercolor, right? I believe, and it's always a dicey thing when I play with anything that stays water soluble, which is why I don't like water soluble graphite, because I don't want it to move once I put it down. But I guess according to my friend Stephanie, there are ways to do that too, where you can, or you just,
She's the one that knows it, man.
or just learn how to use it, basically. you know.
Or do you just paint with oil? Well, sometimes you paint straight from oils.
Yeah, I
without
usually
using gouache underpainting.
Right, I will do it especially because it's really fun to create texture and pattern. Well, mostly texture with like a thin oil underpainting, and then hit it with like the thinners that you use, and you can really burn out some really nice textures that can suggest shapes later on. But I do the same thing with acrylic sometimes, because it's a faster process. You can kind of speed up that part of it.
Do you ever work from live models, or are you just pulling it all out of your head? Actually,
I work from photography and pulling it out of my head. Live models stress me out, just because I spend so long. I want to spend so much time doing things, and sometimes I want to go where I want to go. Like I want to work on this area of the shoulder for like 3 hours, and like it would probably cost me $1,000 to have somebody sit for long enough to do something.
these hands are photographs of his own hand that was taken, and the drapery over here was.
It was a curtain.
It was a curtain or a sheet that was you, and then the rest is Yeah.
I do hire models to photograph. I'll set up lighting situations and photograph them, and then of course you have to make allowances for lens distortion or incorporate it, but know that it's there when you're doing that. So.
Have you ever airbrushed?
Actually, when I started doing color back when I was, when I first began doing Magic the Gathering cards and all that, I did a lot of airbrush, and I still have an airbrush, but mostly the airbrush I have right now I use to apply medium to the surface of drawings, But there's I think his name's Andrew Gonzalez who does these really beautiful like sepia paintings with airbrush, because he'll use clapboard and he'll paint these very large areas and then use the abrasive erasers and go back into them in detail. If you're looking at, it's a very similar process to what I use with graphite, except that he's been doing it longer and with, I guess it's acrylic paint.
Right. He does more pencil than painting, though I always usually beat him about this time of year and tell him he needs to be painting.
Well,
because it's
the next thing I work on will be in a paint. So the next thing, the next time you see us, I'll be dealing with paint instead of graphite.
Right.
So
how close to finished do you consider this piece? I consider it finished.
It's finished based on what most people would care about. For me, I'm just satisfying my obsessive compulsive need to go through and noodle with it. Because a lot of times there's little things that'll happen right at the end that can make a big difference. Like when I got to a point yesterday where none of these shapes were really in here. These little tiny pieces of white that are like little torn pieces of paper. But they started kind of cropping up because one of them happened, or one or two of them happened. And then I started erasing them back out. See, all of these shapes that you see are carved out. They were full of graphite before, and I had to bring the paper back to the white that it is right now.
Yeah.
And that happens I don't know. I'm a slow thinker. So I have to dwell on pieces for a while.
You're a slow thinker?
Yeah, I'm a slow thinker. I have to dwell on them for a while and walk away from them and come back and do that thing where, all of a sudden you realize something is attracting your eye and you don't know why. And usually there's only two reasons why you end up staring at an area on a drawing when you're working at it. It's either it's working really well or something about it's not working at all.
Right.
And so you have to figure, and sometimes it's not obvious right away what that is.
Do you have some sketches you can show people? Do you have any underneath there, up there?
Up here. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. They ask for exercise. I don't know that you do an exercise.
I'll do smaller spot studies.
And then someone else, if you work with preliminary sketches, rough sketch, You have that one sketch that you've done 3 different paintings from
Right.
that
So, yeah.
don't look like the sketch.
So like I'll do notes for myself. These are like what sketches look like to me. This is a horizontal winged figure, basically. A lot of times I'll do things like this that I'll indulge my need to overdo it, and I'll make this, and then this figure or character will show up in another piece as part of another composition, and then like for the where'd it go? Oh, like for this last week, I was throwing in like shapes for a figure up in this little
Have you decided
space.
yet?
Not yet. No, that's why it's sitting up here.
Okay.
That's one of the things I keep coming back
percolating.
to it and thinking about it. Most of my actual production kind of sketches when I'm doing it for myself look kind of like this.
That's what it looks like.
You know, or this. You know, something like something like this starts off as a sketch like this. So, but you know, and I keep stacks of them because I'm constantly making them. Here's the
So
one
that's the one that I'm talking about.
I've done this painting I've done it once so far, but I'm going to do it again because
it was twice.
Twice, because neither one of the finished paintings actually ended up being what this is, and they ended up diverging completely. So it's still here to be done. So this is something I was calling a numinous draconis, which is in biblical lore. If you look back far enough, some of the angels had actually draconic forms, and so this was sort of an address. That was the topic of this particular kind of piece.
Another question is, how did the time you spent on a piece evolve over the years? Oh my God!
Yeah, I used to spend a lot longer.
Oh God,
actually.
yes.
I can.
You'd have a black and white pen and ink piece like this size would take you a month.
Yeah, I didn't really know how fast I was supposed to work back then, and you know, it was like I sort of when I grew up in this, there wasn't a lot of people talking about it in a way that you could easily discuss it like it is now, and so I'd do like a piece a month if I was into it, and that was when I first started. But then I had a kid, and and I realized that if I didn't get myself on a really strict routine of working, that I would never get anything done because kids demand a lot of time, especially when they're young and little. Because I was the one that was up all night. Vicky was up all day, and I was up all night. That's okay. But it sort of progressed from that. I actually had somebody ask me at one point, "Can you do this faster?" I went to a seminar, and a professional artist looked at something I did, and he said, "Okay, this is cool. How long did it take you?" I said, "This took 2 weeks." And he said, "Well, can you do it faster?" And I said, "No, I can't." and I actually went home, and my rebellious nature, I said, "Well, I'm just going to take more time and take longer to do it." And so I started taking longer to do it, but I slowed down. And in the process of slowing down and figuring it out, I actually started moving faster. So now the same piece that took me 2 weeks to do maybe 10 years ago, I could probably do in 4 or 5 days now. Mm-hmm. So it is a thing where I never had the intention of going fast because it wasn't something that appealed to me. I don't like rushing through things. I like sitting with them. I like doing the work, and I don't like. I've had this discussion with other people. There are people in the world who do art that like having done drawings and paintings, and they just want to have as many of them as they possibly can. But I like sitting down and working and doing it. Part of the joy of the meditation of the process to me is physically falling into it and just doing it.
Meditative process.
And I have, in the course of the work that I've done, managed to figure out 2 different ways of working. One is for contract work, which is much faster and formal. And when I do work for myself, I let myself do what I want to do, and I don't.
You only drive me a little crazy.
Well, yeah, it's that.
No,
thing.
you get it done when you need to get it done before you need to get it done.
I can still hit deadlines for like gallery shows and stuff. It's just that I don't make compromises to get anything done fast.
Right.
When you're doing contract work, sometimes you have to do that, and that's the nature of the job. And it's like, as long as you know that going into it, it's not.
You can't
it's not really a compromise if you know going into it that it's a collaboration with people who want maybe something entirely different than you do.
Right, right.
So when I've done film work, I've gotten lucky in that I've done work with people who still wanted me to work in graphite for the most part, and that I can still generate in terms of production sketches for film stuff. I can do 10 or 15 iterations of a scene or whatever in a day or so. With maybe if I want to do a small rendered piece, I maybe do one of those and 7 or 8 iterations of more laid out characters or creatures.
Yeah.
But,
There's
it's definitely a different way of thinking though than what I do
Right.
when I do my own work.
Right. Leah asked that paper looks fairly lightweight. Do you have any problems with paper curling, especially matte medium?
So
No.
this paper is pretty thick. It's almost like a Bristol thickness Stonehenge. And the reason I don't have paper curling with the matte medium is because I do it thinned a little, like it's got a little bit of water in it, and I use it in an airbrush.
Yeah.
So I'm basically just airbrushing the lightest layer on it possible. The paper may curl a little bit, but then once it dries, it all settles down.
Yeah. And I'll frame this.
Yeah.
Right. I won't just stick it in there. All right. This question's been asked twice. What would you tell a person that doesn't know how to draw? Like anything on their own, where would they start?
If you're gonna, this sounds boring, but you have to start. You can either do the academic process and start with foundational form drawing, like drawing shapes and like buy yourself blocks and cylinders and things, or you do whatever it is that makes you the most excited about drawing. Which is, if you like drawing cars, then draw as many cars as you want to draw. Or if you like drawing rockets or science fiction or dragons, whatever gets you on the board,
right?
Drawing, if that's what it takes, do that. And
understand that the first, they're going to just
right.
They're not going to be what's in your head at first.
Right. I mean, even now, I get sometimes closer to what I think when I'm working, but it's still not exactly what I'm looking at in my mind. And as long as you realize that you have to go through a whole lot of a really kind of unsatisfying drawings to get to the ones that really satisfy you. Yeah. It's actually a problem if you get satisfied too quickly.
Right. Yeah. Oh, this looks great. And
Yeah.
you go, ooh.
So.
Since your pencil work allows you to get very meticulous, detailed look, do you avoid painting because you don't give it that certain delicate?
It's definitely, that's probably a part of it, is that it's harder to achieve the same kind of textural quality in paint. I've only just started figuring out how to do that in some minor ways. It's all about me kind of most of the time staying in what I would call my comfort zone.
Yeah.
And paint definitely
I have to kick him out of his comfort zone every so often.
And definitely paint is not in my comfort zone, but I always seem to really enjoy it when I start doing it. And it's like once I start painting, it's like all I do until something takes me out of the house. And then when I come back, I sort of forget that I was on that particular groove and start drawing
He
again.
stomps around when he starts painting because it's like, he goes, I forgot what I was doing.
I definitely have Vicki and I have talked about this. Every piece that I do, when I start a new piece, I have sort of a tantrum phase where my mind is going through all the ideas that I want to draw or paint. And at that stage, it's like, one of the things that I always think is probably what a lot of you guys always think is that everybody's done this before. This has already been done. This is like something I've already done myself. Am I just, is this idea worth doing? And in the end, I finally get to a point where I'm like, yeah, they're kind of, all of the ideas are kind of worth doing because if you've never done them before.
Right. Your take is going to be different.
Right.
Yeah.
So, but I do have that phase that I go through, because I don't really do a lot of series work because of that, because it's hard for me to do something that I've already done that I do just because it's a series,
Yep. Yes, we do all of our own framing, Tim. Actually, I do all of the framing. Mm-hmm. The ornate, where can I get the ornate pieces? They're either new frames that I buy from pictureframes.com. There's some other places too, online. Or I go out to a vintage store, antique store, or people send me stuff. Right. Sometimes I had a friend give us a frame that was a plaster frame that are a little beat up and everything, and they look great.
Can you even see? When I'm playing with the texture of the paper, it's those highlights there that I try to go back and get rid of some of. So I'm like finding these little rivers and grooves on the paper where the graphite isn't, and that's how I'm smoothing it out. And I basically I have to turn my mind off when I do this, so I usually have an audio book or something going on in the background or music, because it's definitely one of those things where you'd probably go crazy if you had to think about it too much.
Yes.
But I enjoy doing it. I could spend the entire rest of the night. I could spend another 12 hours just going through and
but
making this more
he's not
valuable.
going to. It'll be done by tonight.
Well, she's not going to let me. So.
Right. M.K. Nelson, art by M.K. Nelson. When you paint, do you draw a full underdrawing and paint over it? Not usually.
I've not done that. Once or twice I've actually drawn on like an Arches hot press watercolor paper, and then like completely sealed the drawing with like an acrylic varnish, and doing the painting on top of the drawing to me seems kind of like it kills some of the energy. So what I end up doing is I'll do a drawing like this, but when I do the painting, I'm not gonna follow all of these lines. I'm just going to go back and follow the basic geometry of the landscape, the composition,
right,
and let it become new shapes and new forms, so that when I finish when I'm working on the painting, it doesn't just become repetitive.
Right.
I have friends like Donato will do he'll do like a nicely rendered drawing and then print it on a heavyweight paper that he mounts to a board and paints on top of that. I've done that once or twice too. I actually don't like. You
tend to paint more, in my opinion. You tend to paint more freely if you don't take one of your drawings and try to paint it, because it's almost, you're too restricted then.
Right, and that's I tend to like to find a lot of shapes when I'm painting that aren't bound by a previous drawing.
Right.
Unless I'm doing something that's like figurative, in which case I might do a really tight line drawing of the geometry of the body before I start, just because I want to know where everything's going.
Right. The name of this piece is the Cathedral.
The Cathedral,
and it's going to be a larger piece. And this one will probably. Is this going to Monster, or is this going to the solo show?
This will probably come with us. I don't know yet. It's probably going to. I want the painting to go to the Capro show, but. The actual painting that I want to do, this is probably 11 by 14 or 12 by 14 paper.
Yes.
And I want the painting to be like an 18 by 24 or 18 by 36.
Gotcha.
So it'll be larger. So.
Yeah, if people are asking, he might have answered some of the questions. It's Stonehenge Cream Journal paper, and normally you're not painting on the paper. Normally you're painting on board.
Yeah, I usually paint on board. I will, however, like if I spray this with matte medium, I will go back and sometimes tickle the blacks with a very thin.
Literally tickles them with like a zero.
Well, a 3.0 Windsor, like a 3.0 Series 7 Sable. Right. And I'll go back and like tickle the blacks with like an acrylic gouache, like something that's really dark black,
right?
And that really punches the value.
Hey, Mauricio. Yes, and this will be up on YouTube, which is at Alan Williams Studio, and on the Patreon. I'm a week behind in Patreon because I had taxes and we had sick kids home, and I was buried under other stuff. So. The Patreon is Alan Williams. If you want to jump over there and just follow if you want to. You don't have to pay us anything unless you want to.
So one of the things we were talking about last week, and you can see probably more easily in this piece, is where the edges get lost. I like it. I really like, in especially stuff like this where you have edges that come and go in focus. Kind of really can direct your eye around a piece, and it gives it a dimensional weight too, because your eye doesn't see everything in complete detail unless you're looking straight at it. So it's sort of like an illusion that it's the illusion that the stuff is receding back into the paper.
Right.
So I'll like purposely like kind of smooth some of those edges out and blend them into the background.
Yeah. Well, Amara's art is being very nice.
Huh?
She said, "Alan, you're crazy lucky to have a partner like me."
I am truly crazy lucky to have Vicky. It is true. Even just having somebody that will hold the camera, and that is only a fraction, 1% of what she does. I mean, taxes, and she does the business and the framing and calling the shows and getting everything ready and
crabbing at people,
forcing me to get on a plane sometimes when I don't want to go to a show.
Yes.
So I mentioned this on Facebook earlier, that this is the most interaction I have all week with people.
I'm making you do it. I don't make you do it. Well,
No,
maybe a little. No.
It's gotten easier. But most of the stuff that I think about when I do this is rhythm. You know, I try to make sure that things don't line up, tangents don't line up inappropriately, or when I say they don't line up in a way that's awkward looking, that the shapes don't repeat in a pattern that looks too manufactured. You know,
Right.
which for the fabric, you know, that's easy when you have a piece of photo reference for that. But
yeah, you use photo reference for the parts that are.
yeah.
How did we meet? We met at Dragon Con back in 1988.
1988, yeah.
1988.
In October. That was our anniversary. October 17th, 1988.
We were at Dragon Con.
Yep.
He had art up there.
Which I will be back at Dragon Con this year,
Well,
because
that's right.
I'm one of the judges for the art show. So if you guys are submitting work, I get to see it. I'm one of the judges this year. So
What are you talking about, Amy Baker Shipley?
what is she talking about?
She stands in front of Vicky with a baseball belt and yes, mine. I think you're talking about me.
I think there's like some sort of a pool or a waiting list that if I croak other artists who are in line for Vicky's service.
That's morbid.
Yeah.
They have to put up with me, though.
Well, you're not that hard to put up with.
Oh, you're so sweet.
I have to say that.
Oh, stop! You asshole.
So,
I had to say that. Get me out.
help me.
Oh, yeah, man, we watched Get Out a couple weeks ago. That
was
was
great.
awesome.
Yeah.
This is pencil. Pencil on Stonehenge cream journal paper.
When I'm done with it, I'll put a scan up, and then I'll put a scan up that'll compare this to what I'll do after I spray it with matte and then punch the blacks with some acrylic wash.
What do you fear the most? That's a big one.
Be specific. Like in life or in I don't know. What do I fear the most? Most in terms of like
What was that?
generalized fear, something happening to my kids.
Yeah, probably.
That would be about it. I've had a lot of interesting things happen to me in my life, and then most of the time it just teaches me that fear in and of itself doesn't do much of a good.
Right?
Doesn't do,
You're going to be afraid to talk to someone. You're going to be afraid to go out and meet people and all that stuff, and you tend to. You're either here or you're not.
Yeah.
What lead? He likes Cran Dash.
These are Mitsubishi Hiones. These leads.
Tombow Mono 100s for the pencil part.
Right.
For solid pencils.
Yeah. This is a Cran Dash lead holder with Mitsubishi Hione lead.
But the leads that you like.
It's Mitsubishi Hione lead.
Okay.
This is Mitsubishi Hione 10B, right? So it's a super soft lead.
Super soft.
Yeah. And then Tombow Monos, because they have a darker binder than other.
Tombow Mono 100s?
Yeah, Tombow Mono 100s specifically. They have a little...
smoother binder.
Yeah, well, black. Darker binder.
Darker binder.
So this is a Mono 100, right? So, and the ones that have the little plastic ends on them are a little bit less... they don't feel as... they're smoother than the Tombow Monos that don't have this.
Not many people would notice that.
Yeah, this is true.
It's true. It gets a little, and it's not perfect. I think our 15-year-old son said the other day, we went out to go get Chinese or something. He goes, "Are you going to bicker the whole way there?" We were crapping at each other for something.
Oh, yeah. Well, we do that. I mean,
right.
People who are around each other for any length of time will eventually,
crap at each other. Exactly.
It's more.
We use many Palomino Blackwings.
I have them. I have Palomino Blackwings.
We have all the pencils. There's not many that he doesn't have. He just, I don't know. Usually prefer less plasticky in the lead. Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, well, the leads that I use tend to feel real smooth, and they're very consistent. And but I tend to shy away. That's probably why I don't use much charcoal either, is because it seems more. It feels more chalky.
Right.
Like charcoal pencils feel more chalky.
Mitsubishi Hayuni, HI-UNI. You can get those at jetpens.com, right?
There you go.
Those are jet pens? Okay.
Those are 10B.
So jetpens.com.
They also have the
dangerous website.
They also have the Tombow Monos as well there. So
if you miss a day of drawing, do you go mildly insane? No, he just drives the rest of us insane.
Yeah, I irritate everyone else when I'm not working, and I do get irritated when I haven't worked in a while. It's true. I don't.
I mean, there are days you go without drawing.
Yeah.
There are days that we're doing stuff and everything.
When we're traveling or doing something like
right.
We've actually had a vacation where I didn't draw for 2 days straight.
It's because we were playing.
But it's one of those things. I hate trying to get back in a groove, because it usually, like, I've driven out to Comic-Con down in California before, and it takes it's a whole huge trip, and then when I get back it takes me 2 weeks to start anything, and I just hate stopping.
Right. It's not just a 1 week show, it's a week beforehand, or 3 days of driving there, 3 days of driving back, and then 2 weeks of trying to get back into a groove. So you're off for basically 3 to 4 weeks. All right, wait. People ask questions, and I missed some of it. If I miss any, you can always...
Let me see if I can grab that sketch that this was.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, just keep it
yes,
on
this is the texture from the Stonehenge paper. Stonehenge. Yeah, he just works very, very, very softly and lightly over it. I think that's not smudging. That's him just... It takes a long time. And then Tim asked, does the acrylic gloss spray knock the shine from the graphite powder on the clayboard?
On the clayboard, the gloss doesn't kill any of the shine. It actually just makes everything as shiny,
right.
So it's not like noticeable. But this was actually the sketch that led to this. So you can see that it changed quite a bit.
Oh yeah.
You know, I mean but this was what started this. So.
Oh yeah, you were playing with that last week.
Yeah, but this is this is with the acrylic gloss on top of graphite. And as long as the surface is consistent, whether it's shiny or matte, to me, that looks better, you know?
Better than
than if you have a shiny surface
combined. Right.
Like, because with this, there's a couple places where I have burnished the paper, and you can't see it from that side. But on this side, there's a few places where the paper has got a little bit of reflective, and it doesn't really match the parts that are matte. So when I use the matte medium on top of it, this will all smooth down. It'll change the values a little bit, but that's okay because I'll work back into it.
Closer view of the hands. There's 2. There's 3. There's 4.
And lately I've been listening to audiobooks because I've pretty much binge watched everything there is on Hulu, Netflix, Amazon, and
we will show you the pencil and sharpener collection next week. How about that?
Yeah, I'll pull everything out.
He has lots of sharpeners. Someone just IM'd us. It's easier to get a hold of us through email or not on Instagram. It's a little hard to communicate message-wise on Instagram. But
so I in my mind, I call these little areas when you're drawing, and then you get a hot spot, a burnout, and all you have to do is just
What do you have to do? Pick up the graphite first?
Yeah, you just tap it, with a kneaded eraser, and it goes away.
Oh, you don't rub it.
And what's funny is
tell him your kneaded eraser thing that you told him last week.
What?
About how you're supposed to pick it up.
Well, yeah. With kneaded erasers, you don't scrub with it. You lift, you tap it, and lift as much graphite as you can get off just by tapping, and then you can go side to side. Because if I went side to side with it on this, it would just create these long, ugly smears. But
Carolina got some Tombows and Hayunis because of you.
Oh, I hope she likes them.
Any plans to get back into the gate? I think the Gate of Fire. They said the Gate of Ascension. I think that.
Oh yeah, I actually have it in that I pull it out and look at it and go, this is going to take a lot of work to finish, and I want to keep it at the same level. It's actually one of the pieces I want to have finished by the end of this year.
before July.
Yeah. It'd be cool to
I
have.
like giving him those.
It would be
things.
cool to have it.
He
for
goes,
the,
I
for
need
the
it for this.
copper
And I
show.
go, no, you need it by then.
But
Yes. What do you think of the moleskin sketchbooks? We have a lot.
I have I
work
have
in
this
them a
sort
lot.
of I don't know what it's called. It's like the Manchurian Candidate thing where you go and you buy a bunch of one book and just compulsively. So I compulsively have been buying moleskins, and I have like 10 or I draw on them, but I just don't draw on them enough that I should have as many as I do.
No, I think I cut you off the moleskins.
Yeah, I haven't bought any in a while. I like the paper though. The paper seems to handle pretty well, especially like some of the older ones when the yellow dye they put in the paper can be erased, so you can actually erase a highlight into that yellowish paper.
That's the one you like?
Yeah. So I actually worked on that for one of the concept jobs I did first. I did
The
for
moleskin?
Mountains of Madness. I worked on the
Okay.
moleskin stuff a lot.
What's your favorite spray fixative for pencil? You don't have a favorite. I'm using the one from like...
My favorite thing to use as a spray fixative is that Liquitex Ultra Matte Medium thinned with a little bit of water and run through an airbrush.
Right. But it takes a lot of prepare. I think
Yeah.
if you're talking about a workable fixative,
But a
though,
workable
that you
fixative,
buy,
yeah. For me, I tend to just
the Blair, right?
It's Blair, yeah, Blair, or I think maybe 3M makes one too, right? 3M workable fixative. But they seem pretty equal in terms of what I need them for, you know. And then I use like for this kind of stuff for the super gloss, I'll use like a Krylon clear coat acrylic gloss medium or acrylic gloss. So
How do you prepare the paper for acrylic gloss?
I don't do acrylic gloss on paper. It's only on this board,
Right.
On this
Heavier
ampersand board.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
On paper, it's almost always matte medium, and it's a light spray. It's just enough to kill the gloss. And the other thing it does is it's a matte, so it also gives it a very small, fine tooth. Mm-hmm. And then I can work back into it with the Nero blacks or the Wolf carbon pencils, which are sort of like, I guess, a hybrid graphite carbon pencil. I'll use those sometimes.
Right.
Or even on top of the matte medium, you can even use Prismacolor black. Looks pretty good.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, but just for little spots, not for everything. But.
Yeah, I have a video that I'll throw up on YouTube. That's Alan Williams Studio. I'll throw the video up of you doing the matte medium spray.
Mm-hmm. It's one of those things that's more difficult to see online. If you were to see it in reality, what it ends up doing is making the drawing look like it's printed on the paper, basically. It
evens
completely unifies
everything
the
out.
surface in terms of gloss.
Right.
It makes it all matte.
Right. This is paper, not board.
Yeah.
The other board is ampersand clay board.
It's really kind of cool to look at in person. It's hard to see online.
Yeah, but all your stuff is like that.
Yeah.
You didn't do any sketching this week. Maybe I'll sketch next week.
Yeah.
Even over Prismas. Do you ever use the matte medium over Prisma?
I have. I did multiple layers of matte medium on a piece that it was the Lost Love piece.
But that was brushed though, right? Was
I
painted.
used it with a brush, and that's when I also found out that
You
when
can
you
fuck it up.
well, yeah, because if you brush matte medium over unfixed graphite, it's going to move it around.
Right. So if you brush it over this, everything gets a little murky and muddy.
Yeah, and with that one, for whatever reason, when I put the matte medium on, it probably had something to do with the humidity that day. It got cloudy, and that totally freaked me out. And I was like, okay, I've ruined it. But then I paused and took a deep breath, and just went back and worked back into the piece again with more, what do you call it? Prismacolor. Mm-hmm. And it actually ended up having a really nice effect on the piece.
This is the guy from last week.
Yeah. And a lot of my drawings, I'll have more than one out on my desk just because I'm continuously thinking about how is it going to resolve, what am I going to do, how am I going to finish it. It's just part of my process, really. Sometimes they'll go in a drawer.
Oh my God, I used to go through the drawers before we hit Monster Palooza.
Yeah, and I'll have bits and pieces of things that, like that piece, the one she just saw, this one right here.
Right.
That was a sketch that I had in one of my random Strathmore pads for like 3 or 4 months, and just one day it struck me that it was what I wanted to do, so I picked it up and started working on it.
Yeah, so when you're at the painting thing in a couple weeks, I get to bring all of the sketchbooks and all the stuff from the drawers and pull them out and see what I can frame.
I do not dispute you.
Often I have to do that. Often I'll go through drawers and go, there's like 5 finished pieces in here. Why aren't they framed up?
I have a lot of...
Why aren't they on the site?
Well, and I have a ton
that's
of,
my job too.
I have a ton of
forgot.
concept drawings and stuff that can't go out until the movie comes out. And,
Right.
You know, so...
So we're in the last 5 minutes here. So
next week I'll try to be at a different spot in a drawing so that it's, or a painting, so that it's a little more dynamic. Because this part is more of just the calming down phase. They say that, you know, the last 5% of a drawing or a painting is what makes or breaks it. And that's kind of why I usually slow down as I'm finishing it, because I need to have that thought process where I start to notice little bits and pieces of things that might change it drastically.
right.
This one is probably not going to change too much from this point.
No color?
Not on top of it, you know. But the painting might be in color. I'm not sure yet.
Yes.
Or it might be a monochromatic painting. I don't know.
it needs to be in color.
So,
Could be monochromatic though. Not black and white.
no, but...
Thank you guys for coming and everything. Okay. You know us here as I_just draw. Blah. I haven't even drank anything tonight.
I_just draw.
And then in Twitter, it's I Just Draw. The Facebook page is Alan Williams Art, which is kind of, it's, you know, it's still there. And what else? Website is Alan Williams Studio. YouTube is Alan Williams Studio, and there'll be more videos up this week, but I have to finish taxes. Sorry, guys, because he gave me a list of 10 things, and now I don't know. Can't find them. They're somewhere.
Plus,
I'll never show them my office.
Hmm?
I said I'll never show them my office
Wow.
because it's scary.
Yeah, but
And Patreon. Patreon is Alan Williams.
Yeah.
Patreon.com/Alan Williams.
so maybe I'll figure something else out next week that'll be a little bit different, I think.
All right. Thank you guys for coming and everything. I don't think they mind. They just like to be able to
Well, I appreciate
chat
it.
with you. That's
I
what they're
appreciate
saying. I will actually tell him that and everything. I'm not telling him.
I appreciate it. But it's important, I think, sometimes to see that there are times when a piece moves fast and times when it moves slow. And I just enjoy both aspects of those things. I enjoy working.
He just enjoys working.
Yeah, I just like doing it. I never really have been one to, you know, go out a lot and party. I mean, it's just not what I've ever done. So this is pretty much the way that I have fun most of the time. That and, you know, obviously, you know, playing with my kids. Earlier tonight, Maeve and I sat around and did, I don't know if any of you guys are familiar with the little resin petri dishes with the acrylic, not acrylic, but alcohol-based colors that you can throw into it, and it makes these little, like, constellation shapes. So she and I sat around playing with that stuff for a while.
Mm-hmm. No, he doesn't use charcoals. It's all pencil.
I've never gotten used to the kind of chalky feel of charcoal. Even though I have some charcoal powder that I might try here at some point.
You should try something out new. Then they would see how truly frustrated you get when they try something new.
I love that part though. I mean, the frustrating part means that I'm learning something.
I don't do any art. I do the framing. Anything past this point, when he's done, I do it. Framing, taxes, shows, getting ready for the shows, making sure we have everything for the shows.
Now,
everything.
She could do art. I've seen her do art before in the past when I first met her, because she has a she has a degree of design for interior design. So I've seen her do layouts and housing design and interior designs and things like that. So,
all right. You are welcome. Everybody says thank you for the live stream.
Well, thank you for showing up and for the questions.
Yes, absolutely. And we will see you guys later. See you on the dark side. On the flip side, what is it?
On the flip side.
Oh, God. See how truly geeky I am, or what? I don't know what's going on. Bye, guys.
Thank you.